I've always loved dogs ever since I was a toddler. I used to frighten my mother rigid by insisting on running up to every strange dog on the street and giving it a hug. Probably not a very sensible thing to do, but at the time I loved it. I've always had dogs in my life, and so when I became High Sheriff of Gloucestershire in 2016, it was a natural gravitational move towards the dog and horse sections. And it was then that I learned not only about the amazing work that they do, but also that they don't get a pension when they retire. And then I found out after a few years that prison dogs and fire dogs are in the same predicament. And so it made complete sense to launch, along with Rich, who's on the management committee, and our wonderful trustees, launching the National Foundation for Retired Service Animals, which means that all three services will be taken care of. And these guys, Holly, and dogs like Holly and horses, will not have to worry about any ongoing bills later on in life when they have got their paws and hooves up.
Very strong dogs, yeah, they are very strong dogs, and they do adapt to being retired. First couple of months is a little bit strange, but they soon fall into being lazy and lying around like we all do when we retire. But that's when they need the most care though, when they get to that age. We're attached to the armed response vehicles, so we go to any sort of firearms deployment. We offer backup for them. We offer backup for divisional staff, violent people, domestics, and the other part which we do is the missing people. So these dogs are trained to bite, etc., but they have a far gentler side when we're tracking guys with dementia and old people. And these are people that have wandered off and got lost, and the dog can usually find the track and get to them. And in numerous times we've saved lots of people's lives by doing that.
A hugely important asset. They are superb at looking for weapons, buried cash, stolen property, key evidence from a serious crime, whether that's blood-stained clothing, and even USB sticks. And we use them in catastrophic incidents where there might be mass casualties to try and make that location safe for other officers to do their duty, whether that's firearms officers to move forward to neutralise any threat, or whether it's to look for injured people who need our immediate assistance. So they are tremendously skilled partnerships, the handler and the animal themselves. They are more than the sum of their parts, and we couldn't function effectively without them.
So in the prison service at the minute, we currently have between 700 and 800 dogs serving, and that is a mixture of search and patrol, tornado dogs. So the search dogs will search for drugs, all the known illicit drugs, and then the nouveau psychoactive substances. We will also ask them to search for mobile phones, which are a high threat to prisons through organised crime and terrorism. We'll also ask them to search for illicit brewed alcohol, also known as hooch in prison commonly. All our general purpose dogs will move on to what's known as tornado, whereby if a prison enters into a period of instability and indiscipline, namely a riot, concerted indiscipline, we will deploy tornado dogs along with tornado troops into that environment to regain control of the prison and return it back to a normal state.
So in the fire service, we've got two main disciplines for search and rescue dogs. We've got the fire investigation search dogs, which will assist investigators when working a fire scene with the police while doing their investigation to seek out the possible presence of any ignitable liquid residue. This can then be sent off to a laboratory where it can be tested and can be used as evidence through the courts.
Because of the way they work and the number of scent receptors they have in their noses being up to about 300 million, whereas we've got 5 million scent receptors, they can track down a possible presence of ignitable liquid very, very quickly, saving us time and in the long run money with the amount of samples we'd need to take if we didn't have the dogs.
And the other type of dog we have is the urban search and rescue dogs, known as USAR, and they search for people. However, the people they're looking for are the people that are still alive. So if there's been an earthquake or something and you've got a whole town that's collapsed, it's a massive scene for the crews to excavate. So the dog will go along, will search and will pick up on the carbon dioxide that's being breathed out by the casualty, and then it'll indicate to the handler. The handler will tell the crews to concentrate their work there, then they'll go and look for the next one. most of our dogs having come from rescues, that's also very good when we're engaging with youth groups or children that might have learning difficulties or behavioural problems. You know, we can say, you know, look at this little spaniel that no one wanted, and now she's, you know, she's a fully trained search dog, and what she's achieved. If you work hard, you can do that. So we can kind of use the dogs to draw people in for community events, so we can get our safety messages to them, and for the youngsters to inspire them to do well at school as well.
We look for horses that are about 5 to 10 years in age. We clearly want horses that have a good temperament. They have to be sound, of course, and pass some veterinary checks, which you would expect if we're going to put them onto the streets and do some police work.
So on a daily basis, they might be tasked to a patrol. That might involve dealing with some potential antisocial behaviour, criminal damage. It might be something around rural crime, an area that's having problems with poaching or off-road bikes. It also might be a football match that they're assigned to, or even the rugby. We do Gloucester rugby quite a bit, just as a community reassurance, really, not because there's any issues there, but they go for a bit of community reassurance.
Well, they're incredibly useful. We use them for a whole variety of important tasks and roles, and we get a two-way conversation with members of the public that we wouldn't get if they saw an officer driving by in a car, rarely on foot, unfortunately. If they see a mounted officer, they will swarm towards it, which is a great way of exchanging information. So we can get community intelligence about concerns. We can also pass information out, people that we're looking for, whether they're wanted or vulnerable. We can also put crime prevention advice out in one fell swoop with the presence of a mounted officer and their animal. It's a great engagement tool. So that's first and foremost. We try to retain a duty of care for them right through to the end of their life. They're important to us. They've served the public, and we want to make sure that they enjoy their final years in comfort and in peaceful situations. So for over 4 years, if they've served for more than 4 years, they can go to the Horse Trust, and thank you to them for helping us to find a nice retirement home for our horses. Under 4 years, a bit of a gap, really, and we try to find a good owner that will care for them. And this is where, of course, the charity comes into its own. We want as many options to be able to offer our service animals the very best retirement. And so the charity is giving us another important way that we can consider how best to allow the animal to enjoy its well-deserved retirement. We can't always provide the finances for that, and wouldn't it be nice to be able to offer through the NFRSA an option for those owners to draw down on some financial support to cover off those medical bills? And I think that's a really nice partnership between us looking for a good home, an owner wanting to do the right thing, and the charity stepping in to maybe provide that bridge to close the financial strain that might be accompanied with that arrangement.
What the dogs give you throughout their career is unthinkable, really, and then to go and even contemplating putting it to sleep is definitely not an option now.
For me, that's why I'm so keen to support the Foundation for Retired Service Animals, so that where you've got that balance of some services that can support animals in their retirement and others that can't for whatever reason, that we balance it off and can cover that well to make sure that the national charity can support those services and handlers.
So when they're police dogs, they are, like you said, they're looked after. So their food is all paid for by the police, or their vet's bills are paid for. Their kenneling, so if we go on holiday, the kenneling's all paid for. But once they retire, the responsibility then is over to the handler. We actually buy the dog off the police force for £1, so it becomes a legal transaction. So that dog is now owned by me, so they have no other responsibility for that dog. So, you know, all the costs of having that dog is down to us now. And we do it because we love the dog and we wouldn't want anything else. But you can imagine you've got a dog that's sort of getting towards the end of its life, and that's when all the problems start, and that's when all the vet's bills start coming in. And it is down to us. And sometimes these, you know, the vet's bills can be really costly, and that's why the NFRSA is such a fantastic charity. It just takes that added pressure off of knowing that there is that support behind the scenes, that if we do have a costly bill, we can hopefully make an application and they can assist with them with paying for the bills.
The retirement options, when it came to Marlo, unfortunately she was brought into the service because of her strong desire to bite people, and she was perfect through her working life and operationally absolutely fierce, but when it came to retirement, not the most ideal dog you want to hand off to a member of the public or a friend or a family, so her options were very limited. In fact, her only option was to retire to me, which presented its own problems in terms of my working life and my living situations, but we do it, we take them on and we made it work for her.
Yeah, try to separate a handler from his dog when he retires.
The instincts don't go away, and the training they've had for probably, I think the average is 7 or 8, 9 years for their term. They're not just going to forget or switch off as soon as they're retired. So that's another massive thing you have to be mindful of, that the dog's not going to lose its ability to chase and bite somebody or go and search for something, etc. So it's a hard job.
Krieger had to retire at 6 years old. Come out after a day out, we left him in the kennel. When I got home, he completely went off his legs. Didn't know quite what was wrong with him. He slipped a disc in his neck, which totally paralysed him. And because they had feeling in his feet, they said it was operatable, so we took him to a vet. And he was hopefully going back to work, but because they couldn't get all of the disc out, it's left him with some coordination issues. Cured as best as they're going to do, and he should have no more underlying problems from that apart from his coordination. So there should be, he obviously could get other medical problems, that would be all out of my own pocket. So this is why I'm a massive supporter for this charity.
The insurance companies don't want to touch those because obviously of the nature of the work that they've done, and yeah, they could be retiring at 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. So the premiums, if they are happy to insure, which they don't really like to do, but if they do, you're talking hundreds just on a monthly premium.
They're your best friend on shift. You spend probably more time than you do with your wife, and they're great. They don't tell you secrets.
From day one, you start to build a bond with the dog, as it helps obviously with the training and all aspects of the training and the commands, etc. The better bond you've got, the more the dog's going to listen to you. There's no question in my view that when it comes to retirement, they stay with you. They couldn't go anywhere else, or you couldn't give them up.
The dog attaches, and the hard bit for us then is leaving the old dog at home and taking the new dog to work.
And of course, a dog handler might have 1, possibly 2 retired dogs, plus their new dogs, which they're trying to train and integrate. It's a big responsibility, especially if you have a family or other out-of-work responsibilities, to look after these animals 24/7. They do become part of the family, and they need proper care and attention, and that sometimes comes at a cost.
I think that what's important to me is that these amazing animals are protected in their retirement, and that their handlers are given the support in helping with the financial burden that they would almost definitely face when animals get older and need veterinary assistance, and that is where we will be coming in.
At the time of her retirement, it was becoming apparent she was suffering with a common disease that degenerates the nerves and the spine in larger breeds, and especially German Shepherds. So sort of towards her later days, she was displaying those common signs, and her back end was wobbling. And I spoke to vets again at my own cost, and they suggested that I just keep her comfortable until such time that it was unworkable. I did think of all the things we'd done together, and it's emotional because she's done it as much as I have, and I spent more time with her than I have anyone else. They're not a pet; they're a career partner, a family companion. And I looked at the time of buying her a doggy wheelchair, to just prolong her a bit of life. But obviously, sometimes it's kinder to do the bit we don't like doing, which is unfortunately putting them to sleep, and also the financial impact of, if you keep going, who are you doing it for? But if the NFRSA were on hand, or a charity such as that at the time, I probably would have appealed to them to see if they would be able to offer some support to prolong Marlowe's life, but sadly at the time we didn't have that open to us. And so it was left to me on a rainy car park floor, cuddling Marlowe in her last moments. And it does cut deep, and you always sort of live with those scars of every dog that you've worked with and how they went. So yeah, I think it's a really good thing that we're doing now.
She's an old princess, she's nearly 15, but she's given up so much of her life to the police, to the community, taking drugs and cash and guns off the streets. So when she retires, it's only right that we sort of look after her for all the hard work she's done. So
I think that the most important thing to remember is that these dogs have worked their entire lives to keep us safe, and I'm just a member of the public. I'm not a serving police officer, but I've had the enormous privilege of really learning about the work that they do, and it is really quite extraordinary. And so tracking, finding vulnerable people who are lost, it's not just the glamorous chasing down burglars, but it's also really sort of community work, and obviously, yes, getting guns and drugs off the streets, which makes our country a great deal safer. But I think that there's also the worry that these dogs sometimes may have to be rehomed purely for financial reasons. The National Foundation for Retired Service Animals is going to help alleviate that problem and alleviate the worry for police officers, dog handlers, to be able to keep their animals and keep them in the family. Because you have to remember that quite often a police dog will knock off work at 5 o'clock, and by 7:30 he's on the sofa with the kids watching Coronation Street. So long may that continue. It's been an enormous privilege beginning this fantastic journey alongside a wonderful committee who work incredibly hard, and an extremely powerful board of trustees who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the job. We hope that you too will join us on our journey and watch us as we grow and support us, and for that we thank you very much. It's time to protect our protectors, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to do.